I'd just like to introduce Rob Morgan.
Hello, thanks for coming. We are going to show all of the animation films that I've made. So I've made live action films as well, but we've decided to just focus on the animation films for this program. Stop motion animation. And what we're going to do is, in between each film, I'm going to sort of tell a sort of narrative of how the films were made as we go along. So in between each film, we'll have a break, and I'll talk a little bit and introduce the next film along. So it will break the program up a little bit. So I think what we're going to do to start with is show a film that I made when I was pretty much a teenager, 2 years ago. No, a while ago. And I don't normally show it because it's very, very crude and very basic. I made it as part of a national diploma in art that I did a long time ago. And it was very, very rudimentary and crude, just puppets made out of papier-mâché, and it was shot on VHS. I don't normally show it because it's just sort of, to be honest, not amazingly good. But I think for the context for this screening, I thought it would be a really useful way to start the program off, to show the sort of basic starting point of all of these films, because you can see within that film there's a lot of themes and imagery that carries on to the later films as well. So we'll start with the first film, which is called Paranoid, and it was made in '94, I think. And I promise they get better after this one. So. Originally, I wanted to just have one maggot in that film. That was the original intention, to have it sort of adding an extra element of to fuel his paranoia, or to fuel his the feeling, the uncomfortable feeling. And so I went into a fishing shop and asked, "Can I have one maggot, please?" I went to the counter and said, "Can I have a maggot, please?" I wanted to buy one maggot, and I found out that you can only buy them in pints. So I actually ended up buying half a pint of maggots, and that's why there's so many at the end, because I thought, well, I had all these spare maggots, so I just sort of used them. Interesting maggot fact. I'm full of maggot facts.
The first of many maggots.
Yeah.
I guess what I'd like to kind of kick things off with really is maybe what inspired you to become a filmmaker, and maybe your inspirations and your influences, and then what led you to Paranoid.
The first time I ever saw animation, and it was stop motion, and it had a traumatic effect on me, was when I was about 4 years old. There's a B movie made in 1958 called Fiend Without a Face. Have you seen this? It's a black and white B movie about killer brains attacking a bunch of people. It climaxes with a bunch of brains attacking. They've got spinal cords that they crawl around with, and they besiege this bunch of people in a farmhouse or something. And but the brains are actually done with stop motion. And my uncle had this. Used to be able to get these like condensed 8mm reels of the highlights of films, and he had the highlights of this film, including the stop motion climax. So when I was 4, I saw this 8mm projection of these stop motion brains attacking people, and more than the idea of brains attacking people, what really freaked me out about it was the weird quality of the movement, which I later discovered was stop motion animation. So it was, like, a lot of people maybe discovered stop motion through Ray Harryhausen or things like that, but for me it was Fiend Without a Face, these stop motion brains, and it freaked me out. And it was only years later that I learned it was stop motion. And then later on, I ended up going to art college because I was good at drawing and stuff. And while there, I really got interested in making films. I was always a big horror movie fan as well. And I was doing a lot of paintings and drawings. And I started to get the stupid idea that maybe I could try and make a film at art college, but I didn't know anything about actors or anything like that. So I thought I could the most obvious thing would be to start making drawings or sculptures move. So that's why animation became an obvious thing for me to try out.
And I liked what I saw, and I said to myself, that's for me. A lovely morning, I remarked, and you were quick to agree.
So it's clearly a massive leap forward. Looking back at it now, what can you tell us about the production of the film we've just seen?
Well, it was my third year final project student film at the Surrey Institute of Art and Design, which I don't know what it's called now, the University for Creative Arts in Farnham, I think. Yeah, so I shot it in my parents' garage, and yeah, that's all I don't know, it's fond memories. It was shot on 16mm as well, Bolex 16mm camera, so these first two films are the only two films I made without any sort of video assist, which now I can't imagine making a film without having a video backup, but it was shot completely blind with like film. You only know what you've got. You only know what the footage is like when you get the film back from the lab. Well, actually, sorry, with the first one, that was VHS, so I could see that, but with this one it was a bit scary to sort of be leaping into the unknown with using film for the first time.
I think again it's further developing the ideas that were kind of hinted at in the first film, is kind of about decay and, like you say, about isolation, loneliness, and these are things that kind of permeate your work really from all the way through. I mean, is that where does that come from?
I don't know really. I just always find stop motion puppets, I always feel really sorry for them for some reason. And whenever I start thinking, what I normally do with the pure stop motion films, what I tend to do is start with a puppet. I build the puppet before I write the story. So it always starts with sculpting a character, making the finished character. So I made that guy completely before I come up with an idea for the story, and then that character starts sort of dictating a sort of a story or a world that he lives in. I've done that on The Separation, which we'll also watch, and also Bobby Air, which is the later one. I just make the puppet first, then write the story around the puppet. And so whenever I sculpt these puppets, I end up, for whatever reason, making really pissed off looking puppets that just look really unhappy. I don't know why that is, but then it starts naturally building around that. It's sort of not a conscious sort of thing where I'm like, okay, I'm going to make a film about, loneliness or whatever. It just sort of it's just a natural. It evolves.
And also, when you're making the puppets, the facial expressions stay the same, don't they? But a whole range of emotions kind of go throughout the film. I think that's a really that's one of the most striking things, is that the actual the faces don't change, but just
you project onto the faces. That's another thing actually, is the thing that starts when I start making the characters. It's always the aim is always to get the expression on the face right, and to find an expression that starts suggesting lots of different things. An expression that's enigmatic, but can depending on what angle you look at it from, you can read different things into it. So all of the characters in these films have the expression is fixed; they never change. But it kind of seems like they are changing their expression, depending on what point in the story you're at, and how the shots juxtaposed with the other images in the sequence. You read different things into the same face. So and I always really like that. I don't really like puppet films where the characters are just, moving their face all the time. I like them when they're very fixed, because I like to be able to project onto them.
After this film, the next film we're going to see is The Cat with Hands, which was made for the channel. I can't remember what was the slot called. The post Channel 4 News slot.
Yeah, I think they just called it the slot, but it was a 5-minute. But the animator in residence scheme, which was the funding scheme that the film was made under, was a long running collaboration between the Museum of the Moving Image and Channel 4, and the idea was that you'd pitch an idea to Channel 4. It was designed for recent graduates who'd made one student film and wanted to make their first sort of professional film. And so you'd pitch your idea, and the deal was that you would go and be a sort of living exhibit in the museum and work on a development piece of the film. And then once you'd finished that, on a very low budget, you'd take that sort of test version of the film to Channel 4, and then they would fund the film properly based on that. So they got an exhibit out of it, the museum got an exhibit out of it, and then you got to make your film. So when I did it, it moved around a few times. It ended up here actually at this museum, I think. But when I did it, it was actually in the IMAX, the foyer of the IMAX cinema in Waterloo. This weird little white shed with an open top with windows, and I'd made a little test version of The Cat with Hands in that room. And kids could like look through the window and watch me doing it and throw popcorn over the top and stuff. And I made this little 2-minute test for it, which we're going to see actually. We'll show the test version, and then straight after that we'll go into the final film. So you can see the difference between the test version of the film that we made and then the final version. So I pitched for it, and then and they took on 4 per year, and they liked the film, and it got commissioned. It was great.
Have carried on like this, even different parts of people, like it wanted to be a person. Until that animal looked just like you or me on the outside.
Do you want to explain a bit about the process of how this film came about? We talked about it a little bit before, but maybe in more detail about how the full version.
I mean the original idea was it was based on a nightmare that my sister had when she was like 8 or 9 years old, about this cat with hands chasing her and her friends around, and it didn't occur to me that it would make a good film until after I'd done my student film, and I was trying to think of an idea for this scheme, and that kind of came to me. I thought that would make a really good little short. So the version that we shot, the test version, was done in a tiny little room in Waterloo, and then when we got the go ahead to make the final version, they had really a decent budget, and we ended up filming it in a studio in West London, and it was quite a long. We got a really good deal on a studio. We had quite a leisurely shoot. It was a 6-week shoot to do the whole thing. 2 weeks for the live action. There's like about 30 seconds of live action. We had 2 weeks to shoot that. So there was a lot of takes. And also it was the first time I'd ever done live action, so it was nice to have a bit of time. And then 4 weeks for the animation. And it was tough getting when we were editing it. It was very tough to get it down to because it's for a specific slot. It had to be 3 minutes and 10 seconds. And I remember we actually phoning up Channel 4 and asking, "Can we just have one more frame, please?" Because one of the edits didn't work, and Tony Fisher, the editor, had to phone Channel 4 up saying, "Can we just have one more frame?" And they eventually gave us this one frame. Thanks. So it was that was really difficult editing it, to squeeze it all in to the. That's why it's so fast paced, I think, as well, because it had to just be done in 3 minutes.
Something I noticed in the transition between the test version is that in the test version the hands are slightly bigger.
Slightly bigger.
Yeah, which kind of made it was almost more freaky. I don't know.
It's the same hands actually. It's the same. It was a friend of my sister. Had a little boy who was 5 at the time, and we took a cast of his hands. So they are, and we used the same cast for the final film. So it is the same hands. It was a different cat though, because these were stuffed cats. I should say that because we hired a taxidermist to make these cats because we couldn't. We actually investigated making a realistic cat. We went to Jim Henson and inquired about how much it would cost to actually make a cat. And their budget for making a cat puppet was almost twice the budget of the entire budget of the film.
Wow.
So we had to...
So dead cats it was.
So dead cats. But the cats were, I should say that no cats were harmed in the making of this film, because they were all basically cats that had died, European farm cats that had died, and the taxidermist guy we were working with had a lockup that was full of dead animals that people send to him from all over Europe, and he just bung them in his freezer. So I met him at his studio one day, and he took me out to his car, and he just smoking his roll up. I took me out to his car and opened the back of his car. I go, "Which one do you want, mate?" And there was just loads of dead cats in the back of his car, and I had to just go, "One, please." Yeah, it was really weird.
It's also one of the notable things at this point is that this is the first film where you worked with Mark Ashworth, or Zeno as he's credited on the film. How did that come about, and did you know each other already, or because he's done everything since, hasn't he?
Yeah, Mark is a friend of mine who I knew through a mutual friend. He was a musician, and he wanted to get into sound design. So I just, we became friends, and I just asked him, "Do you want to do the sound design for this film?" And he's done every film I've done since. And we tend to just go around his house. After I've shot the film, we go around his house and he watches either a rough cut, usually the final edit actually of the film, but with no sound on. And then we start just sort of, we call it our bag of tricks. We just sort of start making loads of sounds, weird. He's got loads of weird sound equipment and stuff, so we spend ages just slowing things down and making weird atmosphere sounds and strange, time-stretched chimpanzee screeches and things, and make this a folder on his drive just full of sounds, and then we roughly lay them on, but basically then I take all of these sounds away and then track lay it, and sometimes phone him up and ask for some more sounds, and he'll send them over, and then usually it takes about a month or two to just track lay it and edit it and do all of the sound laying. But we've worked on, and the soundtracks have got more and more complicated as we go along. So by the time we get to Bobby Air, which is the latest one, that was a very, very detailed, complex soundtrack.
One final note on The Cat with Hands. I did read somewhere that there was talk of potentially developing it into a feature. Was there any actual mileage to that, or is that just kind of rumours or speculation?
No, someone came up to me at a film festival in Canada and said that would make a great feature and you should definitely develop it as a feature film. And I sort of gave it some thought, but I haven't really come up with an idea that would really work as a feature without diluting it. You know, I'm just not sure it would become something else. So I've never really cracked it. I've never really spent a long time developing any ideas. But if I do come up with something, I might pursue that.
I think it was more the idea of where the different people that the parts came from.
Yeah, I mean, there was a way of doing it almost like but then it's like there's no main character in it. It would just become like a series of vignettes about the various people that the cat met, and then you start sort of shoehorning in a hero who somehow is able to. I don't know. It just felt a bit like it was diluting it. So I just sort of I didn't really pursue it.
Okay.
So we'll go into The Separation next, which is a film that was made after The Cat with Hands. It was made for Welsh TV, S4C, in Wales, and it's a jolly little number about twins. Okay. Yeah, I told you it was a jolly one.
I mean, this was actually the first film of yours that I think I saw. It would have been about, what year was this? 2004.
2003.
2003. So I think it was 2004 at Dead by Dawn
Yeah.
Festival in Edinburgh that I saw this, because the year after I think they did the retrospective of your films, and I think it's probably still my favourite in terms of I think it's just so devastating, and pitch perfect as well. I think it does exactly what it sets out to do, and it destroys me every time. I can barely speak. But do you want to tell us a bit about the production of it, and then we'll talk maybe a bit more detail about the film itself?
Yeah, it was the I built a puppet. It wasn't the puppet that you see in the film. It was actually a sort of prototype puppet, and I just built this character, and it evolved out of that character. And I wrote an original story years before making it. That was much longer, and eventually there came an opportunity to make a proposal for the film for S4C in Wales. After doing The Cat with Hands, we gave the proposal to Channel 4 and they passed on it. So we took it to S4C in Wales, and they were making films with decent budgets at that time, so they went for it. And so I moved to Wales to make the film, and shot it at Chapter Arts in Cardiff, and it was a Welsh crew, and all of the production design and cinematography were based in Wales, and then we came back and edited it in London. So it was tough because it was really long hours shooting, and I was doing we were behind. It was a very ambitious production design, and we were behind on the making of all of the props and sets, way behind. So I was having to go and shoot animation during the day, then come back to my bedsit where I was staying, and then make props all night, and then get up 7 the next morning, go and shoot, and come back. And I remember one day I just went in and started shooting, And after about half an hour, I was like walking to the table going, and I just thought, I'm going home. So I went back and I slept, it was like 10 in the morning. I slept right the way through the day till about 11 at night, got up, had a cup of tea, went to bed again, slept all the way through the night, and got up the next morning and I was fine. I just needed like a 24 hours of sleep basically to just sort of, but so it was a very tough shoot, and we were really against it with the clock was ticking, you know, and we'd hired the studio and it's very, very, even though it was a decent budget, it was just very ambitious. I think at the same time we were making this film, Malloy was making a film with the same scheme, and his film cost about like £5 to make or something, and like, you know, just stickmen, and ours was like this ridiculously ambitious thing. So yeah, it was really hard work to make.
I think watching it again on the big screen, what comes across for this film, and also the man in the lower left-hand corner of the photograph, is there's a moment in both of the films where in the former you have the maggot woman kind of almost like looking at herself. There's a moment of like self-realization with this, and also with the twins.
Yeah.
Of this kind of, it's looking at themselves and realizing the monstrosity of it. I think that's one of the things I really like about it, and it's a commonality between the two, I think.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
Is that fair to say, do you think?
Yeah, I never sort of, I suppose, intellectualized it, but I always liked the idea of puppets looking at themselves, because it's a very human thing to do, and it's a weird, when you see puppets look at, you know, especially when you make really sort of realistic, kind of realistic, in the sense that they look like they could bleed or they're organic, and having them look at themselves in the mirror, I think that's quite a weird, I think there's something about that I really find sort of, it's a very human sort of thing to do, so it's a bit disarming when you see puppets do it. A puppet becoming aware of itself. So yeah, I think it's an interesting point.
And also I think there's kind of themes of sort of, I guess, sort of mutation or kind of decay, and also maybe metamorphosis as well with both of the films. I mean, I guess maybe where does that, where do you come from with that? Is it again purely you make the film without thinking about the theme within it, or?
I don't. It's not. I'm not. I don't really. I never intellectualize. I try not to anyway, because I feel like for me it stops me from being creative if I start thinking about what it all means. So I try to avoid that. It's a very instinctive process. I don't really know where it comes from. I've always been interested. I've always liked it in films when I see things metamorphosizing. I don't know why.
So before we come on to Bobby Yare, the film that we're not seeing tonight because it was your live action short Monsters, I just wanted to talk a little bit about that in terms of the production, and then how that kind of, what that experience was like, and in terms of how it then led you to Bobby Yare, which is having seen obviously Monsters and then seeing Bobby Yare as the film that followed it, it was you know, they're very, very different.
Yeah. So after the separation, I made a live action short for the Film 4 and the Film Council. There was a scheme they did called Cinema Extreme, and purely live action, no animation in it at all. And it wasn't a great experience, because right from the outset, and I'd been used to just developing projects, S4C and Channel 4 left us alone and were very supportive. And this was much more a case of executives being very, very involved and controlling right from the start. And I just felt like I never had an opportunity to find the script, to get the script right with that film. We basically went into production before the script was 100% ready. And I think as a result, the whole film, it was a sort of, it's full of, the decisions I was making were not quite right, because it was like trying to build a house on foundations that were not finished. So you put a brick there and it's like it doesn't quite work because it's sort of all lopsided, and so I was making weird decisions that in hindsight I think were the wrong decisions. And now I look at the film, I think there's some good stuff in it, and there's some bad stuff in it, but I learnt a lot from it. That's the most important thing. But basically on the back of that, I was developing more projects, and for whatever reason none of them quite made it, and I got really frustrated with the idea of just writing projects after project after project and none of them getting anywhere. So I decided to just make a quick animation film on the side that was originally going to be like 1 or 2 minutes long that I could just put on YouTube or something. And I wasn't going to write a script. I just wanted to make a puppet, make a set, start animating, see where it led me. A couple of minutes, what could go wrong? And 3 years later, I got this 23-minute film that refused to end because it was a stream of consciousness film. I had no idea where it was going while I was making it. So I was just shooting a bit, watching it back, and then thinking, okay, what could happen next? Shoot a bit more, watch it back. Doing it kind of in my spare time over a 3-year period with no money at all. And it was kind of like a sort of creative, I suppose revenge in a way, that's the wrong word, but like I wanted to just make something that was absolutely uncompromisingly me, and to be creative on my own terms, and to not analyze it or censor myself, or I just wanted to. I felt I had a lot of pent-up creative frustration after those years of developing things that never went anywhere. So it was like I call it my party film, because it's like I just wanted to just absolutely let rip with it and make something that was just fun to make, hopefully fun-ish to watch.
I think people will agree when they've seen it.
So there it is.
So quite a kind of cathartic experience.
Yeah, it was
after
absolutely
endless development.
Really cathartic. It's the most fun I've ever had making a film. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, well we'll watch that one and we'll come back and talk some more.
Okay, cool.
So, where do we start, Rob? Where do we start? I guess we should maybe pick up from when did you start thinking about? Obviously, you had these other projects in development that seemingly weren't getting funded. You were writing them; they weren't happening. When did you decide? Right, I'm just going to do this. My parents lived in Utah for a while, and I went out to visit them, and I stayed there for a month. And I decided while I was out there, I would shoot a little, maybe 1 minute little film. So, and I'd been just in my spare time sculpting a character, which ended up being just the head of Bobby, the main character there. Didn't have a body or anything, I just had this head. And I thought, well, this is a good start, so I'll think of something to go with that character, and I'll shoot a little thing while I'm over there, and I'll put it on YouTube, and that'll be it. So it was going to be a little holiday project, really, and it just started to grow. I built a little set out in Utah, and realised I wasn't going to finish it in time, so I had to bring the set back with me, which was really difficult.
I shot about the first sort of 30 seconds of the film in Utah, and then brought it back and carried it on as I came back. And yeah, I didn't realise it would take as long as it did. But it was nice having. I ended up setting it up in my spare room in my flat, and it was nice just having the Bobby Air room, where I would just go in there every now and again and shoot a bit more, and then reflect on what I was doing, think about what could happen next, and then maybe make some more puppets, and then carry on a bit more. So it was sort of a little side. It was just I was doing other things at the same time, but it was just a nice little sort of side project really. It was just sort of to do in my spare time. And then sometimes I would spend a long period, 2 or 3 weeks, solidly working on it, and then other times I'd have a break for a couple of weeks. Mm-hmm. Nice. It was doing it off the radar. No one knew I was making it or anything, so it was nice to just have it going on.
Did you find that more of a kind of organic experience than the way that the previous films had been made?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it was totally improvised from start to finish, and I set myself rules at the beginning, which was that I would, because I'd analysed all my scripts to death, and I was creatively very frustrated, and I just wanted to just make something without being asked what it means all the time. So I set myself the task of making a film, but I would. The only rule is that if I came up with an idea and it seemed like an interesting idea, it went in, and I didn't question what it meant, and I didn't censor it. If it was interesting, it went in. I'll worry about it later, and then I have no idea what this film is about.
I think to me it comes across as almost as a product of its making and of the experience.
Yeah.
And it's again watching it again there. It's like it's furious. It's like it's angry almost.
Yeah.
It's like it really just has this kind of. It just goes for it and doesn't stop.
There was anger involved. It was sort of creative. It was creative. It was anger born out of creative frustration, and it's a film that's about total unleashing of 4 years of creative frustration built up in me. And I was just like, I don't care if you hate it, even down to the fact that it goes on a bit. Is actually me reserving my right to say I'm going to make a film that goes on for too long. I'm going to make a film that outstays its welcome, and I don't care if you're bored by it. I don't care if it's dragging.
I could see more of it, to be quite honest. I'd happily let him carry on.
Well, I think it's divided 50-50 really. Some people just think, my God, it goes on a bit. Other people say, oh, it's not long enough.
So how has it been received? Because you screened it. It was a kind of still a work in progress when we screened it.
I screened it at Rob's Festival at the end of 2010. It was 99% finished, but I had basically the mastering of it still to do and a few tweaks of here and there. And then I had this whole post-production was just a disaster. It went really wrong, and I ended up having to get my money back and redo the grading of the film because they messed it up. And it's a long process and very stressful because you spent 3 years making something and you hand it over to a post house and then they mess it up, and you're like, because they don't care about it. It's a sausage factory to them. It's just another job, so they just do it really quickly and then give it back to you. Because they didn't have any money really, so I ended up having to do all of the grading and the mix was really good. We got a good deal for that. But what was the question again? Sorry.
What's the response been? Because it's been
it's
very
been great.
Successful,
Yeah,
hasn't
it's been the most, believe it or not, the most successful in terms of the amount of awards it won, the amount of demand it's had. It's been extremely, bizarrely successful. Yeah.
Because you went to Sundance with it, is that?
Yeah, it went to Sundance. It was nominated for BAFTA. It won at Clermont-Ferrand. It's been like, it's amazing how successful it's been. I really did not expect. I expected people to tolerate it at best, because it's a self-proclaimed self-indulgent film. I admit that. I needed to do it to get it out of my system, and I just never expected. I thought people would find bits of it interesting, but I never expected it to be so well received. Yeah.
I mean, in terms of a mainstream festival like Sundance, what was the response? Because when it played, it won the Audience Award when it played at Celluloid Screams. You were kind of preaching to the converted a little bit when something is as crazy as that. When it plays to a fairly straight mainstream audience, how did it go down?
Not as well as it went down at your festival. It was very mixed. I sometimes, after a screening, particularly a high-profile screening like Sundance, I sometimes sort of Google to see if there's anyone, what are people saying about it online. And I found some Salt Lake City news anchors who obviously had free passes to go to all of the short screenings and stuff. And they had an ongoing Twitter competition between them to see if they could find a film worse than Bobby Yare at Sundance. They absolutely just thought I needed help. You know, they really, truly hated it.
You can't please everyone.
Can't please everyone, no.